If I gave you $3 million right now, what would you do with it? Really think about it for a moment.
But first, if this is your first time here, welcome. If you've been here before, you already know. This isn't just a sleep video. Your body rests, your mind travels. You play the video and learn in your dreams. You learn different topics inside your dreams. When you wake up, tell me in comments what you saw. A place, a feeling, a moment. And if there's something you want to dream about next, comment below. You choose the dream. I'll guide it. Sleep gently. Dream deeply. Dream what you want.
Would you quit your job? Buy a mansion? Travel the world? Invest it all? Before you scroll away, let me tell you what this is. This is a slow, immersive story you don't need to watch. You let it play while you relax, rest, or fall asleep. As you listen, your mind starts to visualize the ideas. You connect the dots naturally. And when you wake up, you understand the message without trying. Now get comfortable. Tonight, we're going on a journey that will quietly change how you think, not just about money. Welcome. Get comfortable. Tonight, we're going on a journey that will change how you think about money forever. But first, let me ask you something. If I gave you $3 million right now, what would you do with it? Really think about it for a moment. Would you quit your job? Buy a mansion? Travel the world? Invest it all? Here's the fascinating thing. Your answer to that question says more about your culture than it does about you personally. Because across the world, in Tokyo and Stockholm, in Mumbai and Mexico City, people would give completely different answers. Not because they're smarter or more disciplined than you, but because they've been shaped by entirely different cultural stories about what money actually means. In America, we've been told a very specific story about money. It's about freedom, independence, the ability to do whatever you want, whenever you want, the dream of retiring early and living on a beach, of building an empire, of going from rags to riches through sheer determination and hustle. But what if I told you that in some of the world's wealthiest societies, people find that entire story kind of strange? In Japan, there's a grandmother who walks 30 minutes to save 3 cents on daikon radish, even though she has $500,000 in the bank. In Sweden, there's a millionaire who drives a 15-year-old Volvo and shops at thrift stores, and nobody thinks twice about it. In Bhutan, there's a government that rejected GDP growth in favor of measuring gross national happiness. These aren't cautionary tales. These are success stories. Different kinds of success. See, here's what most financial advice gets wrong. It treats money as if it's a universal language, as if a dollar means the same thing to everyone. But money isn't a language. It's more like music. The same notes can create jazz in New Orleans, flamenco in Spain, or a Buddhist chant in Tibet. Same elements, completely different meanings. And that matters to you right now, tonight, because you're probably stuck in someone else's song. Think about the last time you felt stressed about money. Really stressed. Was it because you didn't have enough to eat? Probably not. Most Americans who feel broke still have smartphones, streaming services, and dinner options. So what was the stress really about? It was about the gap. The gap between where you are and where you think you should be. The gap between your Instagram feed and your bank account. The gap between your parents' house at your age and your apartment. The gap between your friends' vacation photos and your staycation. That gap? It's not real. It's cultural. It's a story. And tonight, we're going to explore different stories. Because here's the secret that the world's most financially content people understand. The goal isn't to make more money. The goal is to want less while having enough. And different cultures have spent thousands of years figuring out different ways to do exactly that. The Dutch have a concept called doe normal, which roughly translates to act normal or be ordinary. In the Netherlands, if you show up in a flashy car or designer clothes, people don't admire you. They think you're insecure. They think you're compensating for something. The cultural pressure isn't to keep up with the Joneses. It's to be exactly like the Joneses. Comfortable. Modest. Normal. Imagine that. Imagine living in a society where the pressure was to not stand out financially, where buying a normal house and driving a normal car and taking normal vacations wasn't settling. It was winning. The Swedes take it even further with lagom, a word that means just the right amount. Not too much, not too little. Goldilocks money. And they've built one of the world's most successful economies on this principle. Not by encouraging people to want more, but by helping people figure out what enough actually looks like. Meanwhile, in Japan, there's a practice called Kakebo, a budgeting journal that's over 100 years old. But it's not like American budgeting, or you track every expense and feel guilty about the latte. Kakebo asks you 4 questions before every purchase. Can I live without this? Based on my financial situation, can I afford this? Will I actually use this? Do I have the space for this? And most importantly, what is my emotional state right now? That last question is revolutionary. Because the Japanese understand something we're only beginning to figure out in America, most bad financial decisions aren't math problems. They're emotional problems. You don't blow your budget because you can't calculate. You blow it because you're sad or stressed or trying to impress someone or filling a hole that money can't actually fill. But let's go back to that $3 million. Because now I want to tell you what would actually happen to most Americans who received it. And this is going to hurt a little. Within 5 years, 70% of them would be broke. Not just back where they started. Actually worse off, because they'd have new debts, new obligations, new expectations. The National Endowment for Financial Education found that 70% of lottery winners go bankrupt within a few years. $3 million. Gone. How? Because they took their American money story and supercharged it. Bigger house, bigger car, bigger lifestyle. They told their friends, helped their family, lived the dream. And the dream consumed them. Now imagine that same $3 million given to someone raised with the Swedish concept of lagom, or the Japanese practice of Kakebo, or the Dutch principle of doe normal. They'd probably invest most of it. Buy a nice but not extravagant house. Continue working because work provides meaning, not just money. Maybe retire a few years early. Help their kids with education. Donate to causes they care about. And in 30 years, they'd likely have $5 or $6 million, and you still wouldn't know they were wealthy by looking at them. Same money. Different story. Different outcome. And that's why you're here tonight. Not to learn some new budgeting hack or investment strategy, but to try on different cultural stories about money. To see which ones fit. To recognize that the financial anxiety you feel might not be because you're failing at the American money story. It might be because the American money story is failing you. So let's begin this journey. We're going to travel the world tonight. To Japan and Sweden. To Bhutan and Denmark. To indigenous communities in North America and ancient wisdom from India. We're going to explore how different cultures answer the most fundamental question: what is money actually for? Get comfortable. Close your eyes. And let's start in a place that might surprise you. We're going to start with the culture that might be the most financially content on Earth. A place where people work less, stress less, and yet somehow have built one of the most prosperous societies in human history. We're going to Denmark. And we're going to learn about Hugo. ## Part 2, Scandinavian Simplicity, 10:30 Coben 00. ## Denmark and the Art of Hugo. Picture a winter evening in Copenhagen. It's 4 p.m. and already dark outside, which happens a lot in Scandinavian winters. The temperature is just above freezing. A light rain is falling. You might think this sounds depressing. But step inside a Danish home, and you'll find something different. Candles everywhere, casting a warm glow. A thick blanket draped over a comfortable couch. Hot tea or coffee in handmade ceramic mugs. Maybe some pastries from the local bakery. A few close friends gathered around, talking quietly. No television blaring. No one checking their phones every 30 seconds. This is hygge. And while it's often translated as coziness, that misses the point. Hygge is the entire philosophy about what makes life worth living. And it has everything to do with money, even though Danes would never talk about it that way. See, Denmark regularly ranks as one of the happiest countries on Earth. And it's not because Danes are wealthy, though they do fine. It's because they figured out something profound. The best things in life are cheap. Candles cost almost nothing. So do blankets, tea, and time with friends. A Danish person can create an evening of perfect hygge for less than $20. Meanwhile, an American might spend $200 going out to dinner, a movie, and drinks, and feel less satisfied at the end of it. This isn't an accident. It's a cultural choice that's been refined over generations. The Danish concept of janteloven, or the law of Janti, teaches that no one is better than anyone else. If you start bragging about your new car or your promotion or your expensive vacation, you're violating an unspoken social code. Not because Danes are anti-success, but because they recognize that status competition makes everyone miserable. Think about it. In American culture, we're encouraged to flex, to show off our success, to make people jealous. We post our vacation photos, our new purchases, our accomplishments. And what does that create? It creates an arms race where everyone feels like they're falling behind. You buy a nice car, so your neighbor buys a nicer one. You renovate your kitchen, so your friend renovates hers. You take a trip to Hawaii, so your colleague books a trip to Bali. No one ever wins because the finish line keeps moving. But in Denmark, the finish line is fixed. It's lagom. It's enough. A comfortable home, meaningful work, time with loved ones, financial security. That's winning. And once you win, you can relax. The financial impact of this mindset is staggering. The average Danish household saves a significant portion of their income, not through deprivation, but through genuinely preferring simple pleasures to expensive ones. They're not sacrificing. They're choosing what actually makes them happy. Let me tell you about Mikkel. He's a composite of several Danes I've learned about, but his story is typical. Mikkel is 45. He's an engineer at a renewable energy company. He makes a solid middle-class salary, maybe $65,000 a year in American terms, though that comparison doesn't quite work because of Denmark's different system. Mikkel lives in a 3-bedroom apartment in Aarhus, Denmark's second-largest city. It's nice but not fancy. IKEA furniture mostly. Lots of plants and natural light. He bikes to work every day, about 20 minutes each way. He doesn't own a car because he doesn't need one. The city is designed for bikes, and for longer trips, there's excellent public transit. On Friday evenings, Mikkel and his wife Anna host hygge nights. They'll invite 2 or 3 other couples over. Everyone brings something: bread, cheese, wine, a dessert. They'll spend 4 or 5 hours just talking about work, politics, their kids, ideas, life. No one is trying to impress anyone. No one is networking. They're just being together. Mikkel takes 5 or 6 weeks of vacation every year. This isn't unusual in Denmark, it's standard. Sometimes they travel, but often they just stay home. They'll bike to the beach, visit Anna's parents, work in their small garden plot, read books, cook elaborate meals. Here's the thing, Nickel has about $300,000 saved for retirement, and he's on track to have much more by the time he's 67. He's not stressed about money. He's not working 60-hour weeks. He's not sacrificing time with his kids to climb some corporate ladder. To an ambitious American, Mikkel's life might sound boring. No Tesla, no McMansion, no Instagram-worthy lifestyle. But Mikkel is deeply content. And that contentment is worth more than any luxury purchase. The Danes understand something about hedonic adaptation that Americans often miss. Hedonic adaptation is the psychological phenomenon where we quickly get used to improvements in our life. You buy a new car, and for 2 weeks it's thrilling. Then it's just your car. You move into a bigger house, and for a month it feels amazing. Then it's just your house. A happiness boost from material upgrades is always temporary. Always. But the stress of paying for those upgrades? That lasts. So the Danes have opted out of the upgrade cycle. They buy quality items that last. They maintain them. They don't chase trends. And they invest the difference. But there's another element to Scandinavian financial culture that's even more important: trust. Denmark has one of the highest tax rates in the world. Danes pay roughly 50% of their income in taxes when you add everything up. In America, that would be political suicide. Americans hate taxes because we don't trust what happens to the money. But Danes trust their government. When a Dane pays taxes, they know they're getting free healthcare, free education through university, generous parental leave, unemployment benefits, pension support. They're not paying for some abstract government bureaucracy. They're paying for a social safety net that will catch them if they fall. And that changes everything about financial stress. Imagine never worrying about medical bankruptcy. Never stressing about how to pay for your kids' college. Never lying awake at night wondering what would happen if you lost your job. That's the Danish reality. And it's worth 50% of your income. This is why Danes work to live rather than live to work. The average Dane works about 33 hours per week. They leave at 5. They don't check email on weekends. They take their vacation days. And their economy is one of the most productive in the world. Because here's the secret: rest makes you productive. Financial security makes you creative. When you're not constantly stressed about survival, you can actually think, innovate, and do your best work. Let's move now to Sweden, just across the bridge from Denmark. Because while the Danes have hygge, the Swedes have something equally powerful: lagom. Lagom is harder to translate than hygge. It means just the right amount. Not too much, not too little. The Goldilocks principle applied to everything, especially money. In Swedish culture, being lagom is the highest compliment. If someone describes your home as lagom, they mean it's comfortable without being showy. If they say your spending is lagging, they mean you're neither cheap nor wasteful. You found balance. The Swedish approach to money is almost mathematical in its precision. Swedes budget carefully, but not obsessively. They save consistently, but not excessively. They spend on things that matter, but they define matters very deliberately. There's a Swedish practice of having fika every day. Fika is a coffee break, but it's more than that. It's a moment to pause, to connect with colleagues or friends, to have a cinnamon bun and a conversation. Every Swedish workplace builds in time for fika. Some have it twice a day. To an American boss, this might sound like wasted time. To a Swede, it's essential. Because fika costs almost nothing, $1 or $2 for coffee and a pastry, but it builds relationships, reduces stress, and makes work bearable. This is the lemming principle in action. Spending small amounts on daily pleasures rather than saving everything for some big future purchase. Finding joy in the ordinary rather than chasing extraordinary experiences. Swedish homes reflect this too. They're almost never oversized. Space is used efficiently. Furniture is functional and beautiful. There's very little clutter because Swedes are ruthless about getting rid of things they don't use. They don't keep items because they might need them someday. They trust that if they need something in the future, they can acquire it then. This attitude extends to their entire economic system. Sweden has something called friluftsliv, which means open-air life. The Swedish government has made it so that everyone has the right to access nature. You can walk through anyone's land, pick berries and mushrooms, camp overnight, as long as you don't disturb or damage anything. What this means is that recreation is essentially free. Want to go for a hike? Free. Want to swim in a lake? Free. Want to pick blueberries for a pie? Free. The best experiences in Swedish life don't require wealth. Compare this to American recreation. Want to ski? $100 lift tickets. Want to camp? Pay for a campsite. Want to access a nice beach? Parking fees, entrance fees. We've monetized nature, and in doing so, we've created another source of financial stress and inequality. The Swedes have made a collective choice that some things should be free for everyone. And those things happen to be the ones that make life most worth living. There's a Swedish word, allemansrätten, which means every man's right. It's the legal right to access nature. But it's also a philosophy that some good should be common, shared, accessible to all regardless of wealth. In America, we've chosen the opposite. Nearly everything is privatized, monetized, turned into a transaction. And we wonder why we're stressed about money all the time. Let me tell you about Astrid. She's a composite of Swedish financial patterns. Astrid is 38. She works as a teacher in Stockholm. She makes a comfortable living, though teachers in Sweden aren't wealthy. Maybe $45,000 a year in American terms. Astrid lives in a one-bedroom apartment that she owns. It's small by American standards, maybe 500 square feet. But it's beautiful. White walls, wooden floors, simple furniture. Plants everywhere. Windows that let in lots of light during the brief Swedish summer. Astrid bikes to work most days. She takes the train in bad weather. She cooks most of her meals at home, shopping at local markets. On weekends, she might go to a museum, many are free in Stockholm, or take the train out to the archipelago for a hike. She takes one big trip per year, usually somewhere warm in February when Stockholm is at its darkest. But most of her vacation time is spent in Sweden. Reading in cafes. Visiting friends in other cities. Swimming in lakes. Going to her family's summer cottage. That summer cottage is worth mentioning. It's a Swedish tradition. Families often own simple cottages in the countryside or by a lake. They're not fancy, often no running water, basic amenities. But they're places to escape, to connect with nature, to live simply for a few weeks. Astrid's family cottage has been in her family for 3 generations. It costs almost nothing because it's so rustic, but the experiences it provides are priceless. Here's what's remarkable about Astrid. She has about $200,000 in savings and investments, and she's not even 40 yet. She retires with a generous Swedish pension. She's financially secure for life. And she's never felt deprived or like she's sacrificing. Because she hasn't been. She's been living exactly the life she wants. The life her culture has taught her to want. A lagom life. The difference between Astrid and her American counterpart earning the same amount is stark. The American probably has significant debt, student loans, car payment, maybe credit cards. She might have 20 or 30,000 saved if she's disciplined. She's stressed about money regularly. She works longer hours. She has less vacation time and feels guilty taking it. Same income. Completely different financial outcomes. Why? Culture. Let's go deeper into what makes Scandinavian financial culture work, because there's a dark side that we need to acknowledge. The Scandinavian model requires sacrifice. That 50% tax rate is real. The social pressure to conform, to not stand out, to be lagom, that can be stifling for ambitious or creative people. The weather is harsh. The winters are dark and long. And there's something else. Something Americans value that Scandinavians have traded away, the possibility of extreme wealth. In America, you can become a billionaire. You can go from nothing to everything in 1 generation. The rags to riches story is real here in a way it's not in Scandinavia. Swedish billionaires exist, but they're rare, and they're often not celebrated the way American billionaires are. Scandinavia has chosen equality over opportunity for extreme wealth. They've flattened the income distribution. The rich aren't that rich, and the poor aren't that poor. Everyone is comfortable, but very few are extravagant. Is that trade worth it? That depends entirely on your values. On your money story. If your dream is to be exceptionally wealthy, Scandinavia will frustrate you. But if your dream is security, contentment, work-life balance, and a high quality of life that doesn't require wealth, Scandinavia has figured that out better than almost anywhere else. As you drift off, think about this. What would your life look like if you adopted just one Scandinavian principle? Maybe it's hygge, creating warm, inexpensive moments of connection. Maybe it's lagom, figuring out what just right means for you instead of always wanting more. Maybe it's friluftsliv, finding your wealth in nature rather than in stores. You don't have to move to Copenhagen or Stockholm to benefit from their wisdom. You just have to try on their story and see if it fits better than the one you've been told. Now let's travel further east, to a culture even older, with lessons about money that go back thousands of years. We're going to Japan, where they've been thinking about financial contentment since before America even existed. Hashtag part 3, Japanese wisdom, 30:0055:00. Hashtag Kikibo, Wabi Sabi, and the art of enough. Close your eyes and picture Tokyo. You might imagine a neon-lit city of excess. Flashing advertisements, crowded streets, cutting-edge technology. The capital of consumerism. But step inside a traditional Japanese home, and you'll find something completely different. Minimal furniture. Clean lines. Empty space that's valued as much as what fills it. A single flower in a simple vase. Tatami mats and sliding doors. A sense of calm that feels impossible in a city of 37 million people. This isn't poverty. It's philosophy. And it has everything to do with how Japanese culture thinks about money. The Japanese concept of madanai roughly translates to what a waste, but it carries much deeper meaning. It's a sense of regret over wastefulness. A feeling that everything has value and deserves respect, your time, your money, your possessions, even your food scraps. When a Japanese person says "madanai," they're not just commenting on waste. They're expressing a spiritual principle. That resources are precious. That using more than you need is a kind of moral failing. Not because of environmental concerns, though those matter too, but because excess dishonors the value of things. This shows up everywhere in Japanese financial culture. The practice of Kakebo, which we mentioned earlier, was invented in 1904 by a woman named Motoko Hani. She was Japan's first female journalist, and she noticed that women were managing household finances but had no tools to help them do it thoughtfully. So she created Kakebo, a budgeting journal that's part ledger, part mindfulness practice, part life philosophy. Here's how it works. At the beginning of each month, you write down your income and your fixed expenses: rent, utilities, things you can't avoid. Then you set savings goals. Whatever is left becomes your spending money for the month. But here's where Kakebo gets interesting. Before making any purchase, you ask yourself those 4 questions we mentioned. Can I live without this? Based on my financial situation, can I afford it? Will I use it? Do I have space for it? And most importantly, what is my emotional state right now? That last question is revolutionary. Because Motoko Hani understood something in 1904 that Western financial advisors are only now beginning to grasp: most bad spending is emotional spending. You don't buy things because you need them. You buy them because you're sad, or bored, or trying to impress someone, or filling a void. The Japanese understood this 100 years ago. Kakebo forces you to pause, to examine, to be honest with yourself about why you're really reaching for your wallet. And that pause saves enormous amounts of money, but more importantly, it prevents regret. How many times have you bought something only to feel guilty about it later? Or forgotten about it entirely? Or returned it? Those aren't just financial mistakes. They're emotional mistakes. You bought something to feel better, and it didn't work. Kakebo helps you figure out what actually makes you feel better. And usually, it's not buying things. There's another Japanese concept that relates to money, though it's usually discussed in aesthetic terms: wabi-sabi. Wabi-sabi is the appreciation of imperfection, impermanence, and incompleteness. It's finding beauty in things that are worn, weathered, old, handmade, slightly flawed. A cracked ceramic bowl repaired with gold. A wooden table with marks from years of use. A garden that looks natural rather than manicured. In financial terms, wabi-sabi is the opposite of always wanting new, shiny, perfect things. It's valuing what you have. Appreciating the patina of age. Seeing your possessions as old friends rather than objects to be upgraded. Think about how Americans treat possessions. We want the latest phone, even though our current one works fine. We want new cars, even though our old ones run perfectly well. We renovate homes that don't need renovation. We replace clothes that aren't worn out because they're last season. This isn't just wasteful financially. It's spiritually exhausting. Because wanting new things all the time means you're never satisfied with what you have. You're always in a state of lack, even when you're surrounded by abundance. The Japanese approach is different. They buy quality items and keep them for decades. They repair rather than replace. They find beauty in aging and wear. A well-maintained 30-year-old car isn't embarrassing in Japan. It's a point of pride. Let me tell you about Yuki. She's a composite character representing typical Japanese financial attitudes. Yuki is 52. She works as an accountant at a mid-sized company in Osaka. She makes a decent middle-class salary. Yuki lives in a 2-bedroom apartment that she bought 15 years ago. It's small by American standards, maybe 700 square feet. But it's thoughtfully arranged. Every item has its place. There's no clutter because Yuki regularly practices danchari, the art of decluttering by refusing new things, disposing of unnecessary items, and separating from attachment to possessions. Yuki's apartment has a low table where she takes meals, sitting on cushions. A futon that she folds away each morning, turning her bedroom into multi-use space. Simple cabinets that maximize storage. A small balcony where she grows herbs and vegetables in containers. She owns one car, a K-car, a small, efficient vehicle that costs almost nothing to run. She's had it for 8 years and plans to keep it for 8 more. She uses it mainly for weekend trips to visit her elderly mother in the countryside. Yuki practices Kokibo religiously. Every evening, she sits down with her journal and records her expenses. Not obsessively, but mindfully. She categorizes her spending: survival, needs, optional, wants, culture, enrichment, and extra, unexpected. At the end of each month, she reviews her spending patterns. Not to judge herself, but to understand herself. She notices that she spends more on convenience store snacks when she's stressed at work. She sees that buying fresh flowers each week brings her disproportionate joy for the small cost. She realizes she's subscribed to streaming services she never uses. These insights allow her to adjust. Not through deprivation, but through wisdom. She starts packing snacks from home for stressful weeks. She continues buying flowers, guilt-free, because she understands their value to her. She cancels the unused subscriptions. Over the years, these small adjustments have added up. Yuki has saved about $400,000. She'll retire at 60 with a combination of her savings, her pension, and Japan's social security system. She'd be comfortable for the rest of her life. But here's what's remarkable. Yuki has never felt like she's sacrificing. She's never felt deprived. Because she's not following someone else's definition of success. She's living in alignment with her culture's values, which are also her personal values because they've been reinforced since childhood. There's a Japanese saying, ichigo ichi. It means one time, one meeting. It's a principle from tea ceremony philosophy that teaches you to treasure every encounter because it will never happen exactly the same way again. This moment is unique. Applied to money, ichigo ichi means appreciating what you have right now rather than always thinking about what you'll buy next. It means being present with your current life instead of constantly planning an upgrade. Americans are always planning. Planning for retirement. Planning for a bigger house. Planning for the next vacation. Planning for kids' college. There's nothing wrong with planning, but when you're always living in the future, you miss the present. The Japanese balance this differently. They plan and save, yes. But they also have a deep appreciation for transient moments. The cherry blossoms that bloom for only 2 weeks each year, you don't save them for later, you drop everything to see them now. The perfect autumn afternoon. The bowl of ramen that someone spent years learning to make. This attention to present experience reduces the need for material accumulation. Because experiences, especially simple ones, become more valuable than things. There's also the Japanese concept of kaizen, which means continuous improvement through small changes. In business, it revolutionized manufacturing. In personal finance, it suggests that you don't need massive overhauls to improve your financial life. You just need tiny, consistent improvements. Save $100 more per month. Make coffee at home 1 extra day per week. Pack lunch twice a week instead of once. These seem insignificant, but over years, they compound into substantial change. The Japanese are masters of compounding, not just financially, but in all areas of life. Small improvements, repeated consistently, create remarkable results. This is the opposite of American quick-fix culture, or we want dramatic changes overnight. We do crash diets instead of sustainable eating habits. We try to save thousands suddenly instead of hundreds consistently. We look for get-rich-quick schemes instead of slow, steady wealth building. And we fail over and over because dramatic change is hard to sustain. The Japanese way is gentler and more effective. Tiny changes. Forever. Let me tell you about another Japanese practice that's relevant here, kintsugi. Kintsugi is the art of repairing broken pottery with gold. When a ceramic bowl breaks, instead of throwing it away, a kintsugi artist carefully glues it back together using lacquer mixed with gold powder. The result is a bowl that's more beautiful than it was originally, with golden veins running through it where the cracks used to be. The philosophy behind kintsugi is that breakage and repair are part of an object's history. They shouldn't be hidden or disguised. They should be highlighted, celebrated even, because they add character and value. Think about how this applies to financial mistakes. In American culture, if you filed bankruptcy or defaulted on a loan or made bad investments, you're supposed to hide it. You're ashamed. It's a mark against you. But what if you treated those mistakes like kintsugi? What if you saw them as part of your financial history that taught you valuable lessons? What if the cracks in your financial past, once repaired, made you wiser and more beautiful? This isn't about excusing irresponsibility. It's about learning from failures instead of being crushed by them. It's about recognizing that everyone breaks sometimes, and the repair is what matters. Japanese culture has a more forgiving attitude toward financial failure than American culture does. In Japan, if a business fails, the entrepreneur is seen as experienced, not as a loser. They've learned what doesn't work. That's valuable. In America, we romanticize success but demonize failure. We celebrate billionaires but mock people who tried and failed. This creates a culture where people are terrified to take reasonable risks, and where financial mistakes feel catastrophic rather than educational. The kintsugi mindset allows you to move forward from financial mistakes without carrying shame. You acknowledge what broke, you repair it thoughtfully, and you become stronger at the broken places. Now, I need to be honest about something. Japanese culture isn't perfect. It has its own problems, many of them related to the very principles we've been discussing. The pressure to conform, to not stand out, to follow social expectations, this can be crushing. Japan has high rates of depression and suicide, particularly among young people and overworked salarymen. The same culture that values harmony and modesty can also punish individuality and creativity. The Japanese concept of gemon, which means enduring difficulty with patience and dignity, can lead people to suffer in silence rather than asking for help. To work themselves to death literally, there's a word for it, karoshi, rather than setting boundaries. And while Japanese culture values quality and longevity, it also has intense consumerism in certain areas. Tokyo has more luxury stores per capita than almost any city on earth. The latest electronics, designer fashion, elaborate hobbies, these matter a lot to many Japanese people. So we're not saying Japanese culture has it all figured out. We're saying they have different tools, different approaches, different stories about money. And some of those stories might serve you better than the ones you're currently living. What if you started practicing Kakebo? Just the simple act of asking yourself why you're really buying something before you buy it? What if you adopted wabi-sabi, learning to appreciate what you have instead of always wanting new? What if you took the Kaizen approach, making tiny financial improvements consistently instead of attempting dramatic changes? You don't have to become Japanese to benefit from Japanese wisdom. You just have to be willing to question whether the American money story is the only story. Whether hustle and grind and consumption are really the paths to contentment. whether there might be another way. As you relax deeper, consider this: what in your life is already enough, if you could just see it that way? What possessions do you already own that you could appreciate more deeply? What financial mistakes could you repair with gold, making them part of your beautiful, unique story? Let's travel now to a place that took a completely different approach to prosperity. A place that literally rejected economic growth in favor of happiness. We're going to Bhutan, a small kingdom in the Himalayas that might have the most radical economic philosophy on earth. Part 4, Bhutan and Gross National Happiness, 55:00, 70:00. When a country rejects GDP. Imagine a country that looks at the entire world economy and says, "No thank you." That's essentially what Bhutan did in 1972 when King Jigme Singye Wangchuck coined the term gross national happiness and declared that his country would measure success not by economic output, but by the well-being of its people. At the time, development economists thought this was charming but naive. A poor mountain kingdom choosing happiness over growth? They'd learn, the experts said. They'd see that you need money first, happiness later. 50 years later, Bhutan is still poor by global GDP standards. The average income is only around $3,000 per year. And yet, when researchers measure life satisfaction, Bhutanese people consistently report being happier than people in countries 10 or 20 times wealthier. How is this possible? What does Bhutan know that the rest of us don't? Let's start with what gross national happiness actually means. It's not just a catchy phrase. It's a serious policy framework based on 4 pillars: sustainable development, preservation of cultural values, conservation of the natural environment, and good governance. Everything the Bhutanese government does is evaluated through these 4 lenses. A proposed mine that would bring jobs and tax revenue? If it damages the environment beyond repair, it's rejected. A new road that would increase commerce? If it threatens traditional village life, they redesign it. Foreign investment that would boost GDP? If it doesn't align with Bhutanese values, it's turned away. To Western economists, this sounds insane. You're turning down money? You're rejecting growth? Don't you want to develop? But the Bhutanese have a different definition of development. They ask, what is the economy for? Is it an end in itself, or is it a tool to help people live good lives? If it's a tool, then you can evaluate whether it's working. And by Bhutan's measure, many wealthy economies are failing. High GDP, but also high rates of depression, anxiety, loneliness, suicide, addiction. People working themselves to exhaustion to buy things they don't need. Destroyed environments. Frayed communities. Is that success? Bhutan said they'd try a different experiment. They'd protect their environment rigorously. By law, at least 60% of the country must remain forested. They'd preserve their Buddhist culture and traditions. They'd ensure everyone had access to basic healthcare and education, both free. They'd measure progress not by what people learn, but by how they feel. The results are fascinating. Bhutan has free healthcare for all citizens. It's not fancy healthcare, mostly basic clinics staffed by trained nurses, with hospitals for serious cases. But everyone can see a doctor without fearing bankruptcy. That alone eliminates a major source of financial stress that cripples Americans. Education is free through university. Again, it's not Harvard level, but it's competent and accessible. Bhutanese children aren't burdened with student debt. They're not making career choices based on loan payments. They're free to pursue work that's meaningful rather than just lucrative. The Bhutanese government heavily subsidizes basic necessities. Rice, the staple food, is affordable for everyone. Housing costs are manageable because land speculation is controlled. Traditional extended families often live together, sharing resources and childcare. What this creates is a floor, a baseline of security. No one in Bhutan is worried about starvation, homelessness, or dying from preventable disease. And when you remove those fears, people's relationship with money transforms completely. In America, we work frantically because we're afraid. Afraid of medical bankruptcy. Afraid of eviction. Afraid of not being able to afford retirement. That fear drives us to accept terrible jobs, work excessive hours, sacrifice our health and relationships. We tell ourselves it's ambition, but often it's just fear. In Bhutan, that fear doesn't exist at the same level. So people work enough to be comfortable, but they don't sacrifice everything else for marginally more money. Because what would they buy with it? This is the crucial insight. Bhutan has avoided creating artificial needs. Think about American consumer culture. We're constantly told we need things we don't actually need. You need the latest phone, even though your current one works fine. You need a bigger house, even though your current one shelters you adequately. You need a luxury car, designer clothes, expensive vacations. Why? To signal success. To feel adequate. To fill an internal void. But those needs are manufactured. They're created by advertising, by social comparison, by a culture that equates consumption with achievement. Bhutan has largely avoided this trap. Not perfectly, they have television and internet now, so consumer culture is creeping in. But traditionally, Bhutanese culture hasn't equated possessions with worth. Success in Bhutan looks different. It's having strong family bonds, participating in community festivals and religious ceremonies, living in harmony with nature, maintaining traditions, being a good person, kind and generous and honest. These measures of success don't require much money. A festival requires participation, not purchases. Strong relationships require time and attention, not gifts. Kindness is free. Living in a beautiful natural environment is free if you don't destroy that environment. Let me tell you about Dorji. He's a composite representing typical Bhutanese life. Dorji is 35. He's a farmer in a village in central Bhutan. He grows rice, vegetables, and raises a few cows. His family has farmed this same land for generations. Dorji lives in a traditional Bhutanese house made of rammed earth and timber. It's 2 stories, animals on the ground floor, family living space above. The house has been in his family for 100 years. It was built by his great-grandfather with help from the whole village. Dorji's day starts early. He wakes with the sun, says prayers at the family altar, drinks butter tea. He works his fields until midday, then has lunch with his wife and 3 children. Afternoon might be more farm work, or repairs on the house, or helping a neighbor with their harvest. Evenings are for family time, telling stories, teaching his children, talking with his wife. A few times a year, Dorji goes to the nearest town, about 2 hours walk away, to sell surplus vegetables and buy things he can't produce: salt, tea, simple tools. These trips might earn him a few $100s per year in cash income. By American standards, Dorji is desperately poor. $300 per year? That's extreme poverty. We'd see him as someone who needs help, development, intervention. But Dorji doesn't feel poor. His family eats well: fresh vegetables, rice, dairy, occasional meat. They're never hungry. Their house is solid and comfortable, cool in summer and warm in winter from the wood-burning stove. They have beautiful hand-woven clothes for festivals. His children go to the village school for free. If anyone gets sick, the village health worker treats them, or they go to the district hospital, all free. Dorji has time. time to watch his children grow, time to help his elderly parents, time to participate in village decisions, time to pray and meditate, time to enjoy the mountains and forests surrounding his village. Is Dorji poor? Or has he simply opted out of a monetary economy because he doesn't need it? This is the radical question Bhutan poses to the world. What if we've confused poverty with simplicity? What if having less money but more time, less stuff but more security, less consumer choice but more community, what if that's actually wealth? Now, I need to be very careful here. I'm not romanticizing poverty. Real poverty, lacking food, shelter, safety, healthcare, education, is terrible. It causes immense suffering and must be addressed. But Bhutan suggests there's a difference between material poverty and income poverty. You can have low cash income but high quality of life if your basic needs are met through non-market means. Family support, community cooperation, government services, subsistence farming, access to common resources. This is threatening to market capitalism because it suggests you don't need to buy everything. That some of the most important things, security, community, meaning, time, nature, can't be bought and might actually be undermined by trying to buy them. The Bhutanese have maintained this balance through deliberate policy. They've restricted tourism to prevent cultural disruption. They've banned plastic bags and tobacco to protect the environment. They've preserved traditional architecture and clothing. They've taught Buddhist principles in schools, principles of compassion, contentment, interdependence. Are these policies perfect? No. They've created some problems. Young Bhutanese people, especially in cities, sometimes feel stifled by tradition. They want more consumer choice, more entertainment options, more individual freedom. The preservation of culture can sometimes feel like cultural stagnation. And Bhutan faces real challenges. Climate change is melting glaciers that feed their rivers. Youth unemployment is rising as young people leave farms for cities where there aren't enough jobs. Consumerism is increasing as people get smartphones and see how the rest of the world lives. The Bhutanese experiment is at a crossroads. Can they maintain their focus on happiness while integrating into the global economy? Or will they ultimately abandon gross national happiness as an idealistic dream that doesn't survive contact with modern capitalism? We don't know yet. But what we can learn from Bhutan isn't that we should all become subsistence farmers in the Himalayas. It's that we have choices about what we value. We can choose to measure our lives by different metrics than income and consumption. We can choose to prioritize time over money, at least sometimes. We can choose relationships, health, nature, meaning, and see those as wealth even if they don't show up in our bank account. Bhutan proves it's possible. Not easy, not perfect, but possible. To organize a society around well-being instead of GDP. To resist consumer culture even when you could embrace it. To say that enough is enough, that more isn't always better, that the good life doesn't require being rich. There's a Bhutanese saying that captures this philosophy: a bird does not need to be taught to fly. A fish does not need to be taught to swim. Meaning, our natural state is to know what we need. We're born with an intuition for sufficiency. But then culture teaches us to want more, to never be satisfied, to always compare ourselves to others, to equate having with being. We learn to ignore our natural sense of enough. Bhutan is trying to unlearn those lessons. To return to that natural wisdom of sufficiency. To remember that human beings thrived for thousands of years with very little material wealth because they had other forms of wealth: community, purpose, connection to nature, spiritual practice, strong relationships. As you sink deeper into rest, ask yourself, what would be different about your relationship with money if your basic needs were guaranteed? If you knew you'd always have healthcare, housing, food, education? How much of your financial stress is really about survival, and how much is about status, comparison, and manufactured desires? What if you started measuring your wealth the Bhutanese way? Not by your bank account, but by your relationships, your health, your connection to nature, your peace of mind, your sense of meaning and purpose? You might discover you're already wealthier than you thought. Now let's travel west, across the ocean, to indigenous cultures in North America who had sophisticated economic systems for thousands of years before European contact. Systems that were so different from capitalism that early colonizers literally couldn't understand them. We're going to explore the gift economy and what it teaches us about the true nature of wealth. Part 5, The Gift Economy, 70:0085:00. Indigenous Wisdom on Wealth and Reciprocity. When European colonizers first encountered indigenous peoples in North America, they made a curious observation in their journals and letters. They wrote that the natives had no concept of private property, no understanding of ownership, no sense of economic value. The colonizers were wrong. Indigenous peoples had sophisticated concepts of all these things. What they didn't have was the European assumption that accumulating personal wealth was the point of life. Among many indigenous cultures, the Haudenosaunee, the Lakota, the Coast Salish peoples, and hundreds of others, wealth wasn't measured by what you kept. It was measured by what you gave away. This is so contrary to modern thinking that it's worth pausing on. Imagine a society where the richest person isn't the one with the most possessions, but the one who's given away the most. Where status comes not from accumulation but from generosity. Where holding on to wealth when others need it is seen as shameful rather than prudent. This was the gift economy. And it worked for thousands of years. The most famous example is the potlatch, practiced by indigenous peoples of the Pacific Northwest, the Kwakwaka'wakw, Tlingit, Haida, and others. A potlatch was a ceremonial feast where a leader would give away enormous quantities of goods, blankets, dried fish, canoes, copper shields, even slaves in the pre-contact era. The more you gave away, the higher your status rose. A chief who gave away everything he owned and reduced himself to poverty was celebrated as truly wealthy. Because he had demonstrated that he could acquire resources, that he was generous, that he cared more about community well-being than personal accumulation. To European observers, this seemed insane. Why work hard to acquire wealth only to give it all away? Where's the incentive? How does the economy grow? But these questions revealed the Europeans' assumptions, not the natives' confusion. The indigenous peoples had different answers to fundamental economic questions. Why work hard? To support your community, to fulfill your role, to gain honor through generosity. Where's the incentive? Status, respect, relationships, the knowledge that when you fall on hard times, the community will support you because you supported them. How does the economy grow? It doesn't need to grow. It needs to circulate. Wealth isn't meant to accumulate in one place. It's meant to flow, like water in a river. This last point is crucial. In a gift economy, wealth is understood as a flow, not a stock. The word currency comes from current, something that flows. But modern capitalism treats money as something to dam up, to hoard, to accumulate in massive reservoirs. Indigenous gift economies saw this as unhealthy. Like stagnant water breeding disease, accumulated wealth created social problems, inequality, resentment, power imbalances, corruption. Better to keep wealth moving. You receive a gift, and you're obligated, not legally, but morally and socially, to pass on gifts to others. Not the same gift necessarily, and not immediately, but eventually. The gift creates a relationship, a bond, an ongoing connection between giver and receiver. This is profoundly different from market exchange. When you buy something in a store, the transaction ends when you pay. You owe the seller nothing more. You have no ongoing relationship. It's clean, finished, impersonal. But a gift creates an ongoing relationship. If I give you something valuable, you're now connected to me. You'll remember my generosity. You'll feel moved to reciprocate at some point. And when you give to someone else, they're connected to you. The gift weaves a web of relationships throughout the community. This is how indigenous societies created social cohesion without market contracts or government enforcement. The gift economy was a technology for building and maintaining relationships. Let me tell you about how this worked in practice. Consider the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, also called the Iroquois, in what's now upstate New York. Haudenosaunee longhouses were communal. Multiple families lived together, sharing space and resources. If you killed a deer, you didn't keep all the meat for yourself. You shared it with the longhouse. If someone made beautiful pottery, they'd give pieces away as gifts. If you had skills, basket weaving, tool making, healing knowledge, you shared them freely. This wasn't altruism in the modern sense. It was enlightened self-interest. Because you knew that when you needed something, food during a bad hunting season, help building a canoe, care during illness, the community would provide. Your past generosity had built up what we might call social capital. You'd made deposits in the bank of reciprocity. But here's the key: this system only works in a community where people know each other and expect to continue interacting. It requires what economists call repeated games. If you cheat the system, take gifts but never give, everyone will know. Your reputation will suffer. People will stop helping you. This is why gift economies worked in relatively small communities but struggled in anonymous modern societies. In a city of millions, you can cheat strangers and face no consequences. You'll never see them again. Reputation doesn't matter. But in a village of a few hundred people, reputation is everything. It's your currency. It's more valuable than money because it determines whether the community supports you or excludes you. And exclusion in a traditional society often meant death. So people were generous not just out of kindness, but out of rational self-interest properly understood. They were investing in relationships, in reputation, in the social fabric that would catch them if they fell. There's an important concept here from anthropology: the distinction between negative reciprocity, balanced reciprocity, and generalized reciprocity. Negative reciprocity is trying to get more than you give. It's what happens between strangers or enemies. Market exchanges often have this flavor, both parties trying to get the best deal, to extract maximum value. Balanced reciprocity is tit for tat. I give you something, you give me something of equal value, we're even. This is fair but doesn't build deep relationships. Generalized reciprocity is giving without expecting immediate or equivalent return. It's what happens within families. You feed your children not because they'll pay you back, but because you're family. Parents gift to children, children eventually care for elderly parents, but no one's keeping score. Indigenous gift economies operated primarily on generalized reciprocity, extended beyond the nuclear family to the entire community. The whole village was, in a sense, family. This created remarkable economic resilience. When disaster struck, crop failure, harsh winter, enemy attack, the community absorbed the shock collectively. No one starved alone while others feasted. Resources were redistributed to ensure everyone survived. Compare this to modern capitalism during crisis. When the 2008 financial crisis hit, millions lost their homes while banks got bailouts. When COVID struck, billionaires got richer while service workers faced homelessness. The system doesn't automatically redistribute to ensure collective survival. It concentrates wealth upward and tells the suffering to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Indigenous gift economies had a built-in stabilizer, the cultural expectation that the wealthy would give to the poor, automatically, without needing government intervention. Now, I need to address something important. I'm not romanticizing indigenous societies as perfect utopias. They had violence, warfare, inequality, and social problems. Different tribes had different systems, some more egalitarian, some hierarchical. And the gift economy wasn't purely altruistic. It was also a tool of social control. Leaders used lavish gift-giving to create obligations, to build power, to establish hierarchy. The potlatch could be competitive, even aggressive. I gave away more than you, therefore I'm more powerful. But despite these complications, indigenous economic systems offer crucial insights that modern capitalism ignores. First, the recognition that economies are embedded in social relationships. Money transactions can never be purely economic. They're always also social, moral, relational. Pretending otherwise, treating the economy as a separate sphere governed only by efficiency and profit, creates social breakdown. Second, the understanding that wealth exists to serve life, not the other way around. You don't live to accumulate wealth. You accumulate wealth to live well and help others live well. When wealth becomes an end in itself, something has gone wrong. Third, the wisdom that unlimited accumulation is antisocial. In indigenous cultures, a person who hoarded resources while others suffered wasn't admired as financially savvy. They were seen as sick, greedy, dangerous to the community. Perhaps they were right. Fourth, the knowledge that true security comes from community, not from bank accounts. You can have $1 million, but if you have no one who'd help you in crisis, you're vulnerable. You can have modest savings but strong community ties, and you're secure because you know people will catch you if you fall. This last insight is particularly relevant now. Modern society has traded community security for individual financial security. We've privatized risk. You're supposed to save for your own retirement, your own healthcare, your own emergencies. The community has no obligation to help you. This creates enormous anxiety. Because you can never save enough to handle every possible crisis. Medical bankruptcy can wipe out a lifetime of savings. The amount you need to retire keeps rising. You're supposed to be completely self-sufficient, which is both impossible and inhuman. Indigenous peoples would find this bizarre. Humans are social creatures. We evolved in small bands where mutual aid was automatic. The idea that you should face life's challenges completely alone would seem to them like a form of insanity. And maybe it is. Maybe the mental health crisis in modern societies, the epidemic of anxiety, depression, loneliness, is partly because we've destroyed the gift economy. We've turned everything into impersonal market transactions. We've isolated ourselves in the name of independence. We've accumulated individual wealth while impoverishing ourselves socially. There's a beautiful concept from Native American philosophy, though it's expressed differently in different tribes, the idea that everything is related. In Lakota, it's metakuyois in all my relations. The understanding that you're not separate from other people, from nature, from the web of life. You're embedded in it. When you see yourself this way, your relationship with money transforms. You can't just accumulate for yourself because yourself includes your family, your community, the natural world. Your well-being is inseparable from collective well-being. This doesn't mean you can't have personal property or savings. It means you hold them differently. You see yourself as a steward, not an owner. You're temporarily caring for resources that ultimately belong to the community, to future generations. Many indigenous cultures had this concept. The Haudenosaunee spoke of making decisions with the seventh generation in mind. How will this choice affect people 7 generations from now? That's your time horizon. Imagine making financial decisions with that perspective. Would you destroy the environment for short-term profit? Would you accumulate wealth you can't possibly use while others suffer? Would you prioritize your children's inheritance over collective well-being? The gift economy offers a radical alternative to the anxiety and isolation of modern financial life. Not a complete alternative. We can't and probably shouldn't try to recreate pre-contact indigenous societies. But principles we can adapt. What if you practiced gift economy principles in your life? Not with strangers, that's risky in an anonymous society. But with friends, family, neighbors? What if you gave things away more freely? Shared resources? Helped without expecting immediate return? Built relationships through generosity? What if you measured your wealth partly by how many people you've helped? How strong your community ties are? How secure you feel in the knowledge that others would support you? This isn't just idealism. Studies consistently show that people who give time, money, help are happier than those who just accumulate. Generosity literally makes you happier than wealth does. And people embedded in strong communities live longer, healthier lives than isolated individuals, regardless of income. The gift economy's emphasis on relationships over accumulation turns out to be scientifically validated. As you drift deeper into rest, imagine a different kind of wealth. Not your bank balance, but the richness of your relationships. Not what you own, but what you've given. Not your independence, but your interdependence, the web of mutual support that holds you. That's the wealth that indigenous peoples understood. That's the currency that can't be inflated or crashed. That's the security no market downturn can destroy. Now let's travel to India to explore an ancient philosophy that's been thinking about money and desire for 3,000 years. We're going to learn about aparigraha, vairagya, and why some of the world's oldest wisdom traditions teach that the path to wealth is learning to want less. Part 6, Indian Wisdom, 85:00-105:00. Aparigraha and the philosophy of non-possessiveness. In ancient India, around 500 BC, a prince named Siddhartha Gautama left his palace, his wealth, his family, everything. He became a wandering ascetic. Eventually, he achieved enlightenment and became known as the Buddha. Before his enlightenment, the story goes, Siddhartha tried extreme asceticism. He owned nothing. He barely ate. He mortified his flesh. He thought suffering would lead to wisdom. But it didn't work. He was just miserable and weak. So we tried a different approach, the middle way. Not luxury, not extreme poverty. Enough. Just enough to live, to practice, to think clearly. This concept, enough, became central to Buddhist and Hindu philosophy. In Sanskrit, it's called aparigraha, which means non-possessiveness or non-grasping. It's one of the fundamental ethical principles in yoga philosophy, appearing in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras from around 400 CE. Aparigraha doesn't mean owning nothing. It means not grasping, not clutching, not being enslaved by your possessions. Owning things lightly, without attachment, without the belief that they define you or will make you happy. This is subtle. You can own very little and still be grasping, constantly wanting more, feeling deprived, envying others. Or you can own quite a bit but hold it lightly, ready to let go if necessary, not attached to it as your identity. The question isn't how much you have. It's how tightly you're holding on. There's a famous Zen story that illustrates this. A monk owns nothing but his begging bowl. He's walking through a forest when bandits stop him. "Give us your valuables," they demand. The monk holds out his begging bowl. "This is all I have," he says. The bandits are disgusted and leave. The monk continues walking, completely unperturbed. He didn't feel violated because he wasn't attached to the bowl. If they'd taken it, he'd find another or do without. That's aparigraha. Not poverty, but freedom from the tyranny of possessions. Indian philosophy asks a question that Western economics rarely considers. What do you actually need? Not want, need. To survive? To be healthy? To be happy? The answer is, much less than you think. You need food, but not gourmet meals. Shelter, but not a mansion. Clothing, but not a new wardrobe every season. Healthcare, but not cosmetic procedures. Some social connection, some mental stimulation, some sense of purpose. Most of what we want beyond basic needs is driven by what the Buddha called tanha, craving, thirst, the endless desire for more. And here's the crucial insight: tanha can never be satisfied. There's no amount of possessions, no level of wealth, that will make the craving stop. This isn't moral judgment. It's psychological observation. Human desire doesn't work like thirst for water. When you're truly thirsty and drink water, the thirst stops. You're satisfied. But when you're hungry for status, for validation, for the feeling that you're enough, buying things doesn't satisfy that hunger. It might distract you for a moment, give you a little dopamine hit. But the underlying hunger remains. So you buy more, earn more, accumulate more. And you're never satisfied. The Buddha taught that this is the fundamental problem of human existence. Not that we don't have enough. That we don't understand what enough looks like. That we keep trying to fill spiritual and emotional needs with material objects. This teaching has profound implications for how we think about money. If the problem is tanha, craving, then the solution isn't making more money. It's understanding what you're actually hungry for, and then finding appropriate ways to meet those needs. Lonely? Buying things won't fix it. You need connection. Insecure? More wealth won't cure it. You need self-acceptance. Bored? Consumption won't satisfy. You need purpose. Indian philosophy developed elaborate systems for addressing these deeper needs. Meditation to quiet the mind. Yoga to connect body and spirit. Seva, selfless service, to find meaning. Satsang, spiritual community, for connection. Jnana, the pursuit of wisdom, for mental stimulation. None of these require money. And all of them address the needs that people are actually trying to meet when they compulsively shop or work themselves to exhaustion or obsess over getting rich. There's another important concept, vairagya, which means detachment or dispassion. It's the practice of loosening your grip on outcomes, on possessions, on how things should be. Vairagya doesn't mean not caring. It means caring deeply but holding lightly. Doing your best but accepting whatever results. Enjoying things without clinging to them. Applied to money, vairagya means doing good work, managing your finances responsibly, but not being controlled by financial anxiety. Not obsessing over your portfolio. Not lying awake worrying about every market movement. Not letting your net worth determine your mood. This is incredibly difficult in a capitalist society. We're trained from childhood to care intensely about money. To see it as the measure of success. To feel like our worth as human beings is tied to our net worth. Vairagya asks, what if it's not? What if your value is inherent, not earned? What if you could do your best with money but not be enslaved to it? Let me tell you about the concept of householder in Hindu philosophy. Hinduism traditionally describes 4 life stages: brahmacharya, student, grihastha, householder, vanaprastha, retired, and sannyasa, renunciant. A householder stage is when you're working, raising a family, accumulating wealth. This is seen as legitimate and important. You're not supposed to be an ascetic monk during this phase. You're supposed to engage with the world, make money, support your family and community. But, and this is crucial, you're supposed to do it with dharma, righteously, ethically, without exploitation, without harming others, and without becoming so attached to wealth that you forget it's just a tool for a good life, not the point of life itself. Then, traditionally around age 50, you're supposed to start loosening your grip, retiring gradually, mentoring the next generation, giving away wealth, turning towards spiritual practice, preparing for the final stage where you renounce everything and focus entirely on liberation. This life stage approach is fascinating. It says, yes, accumulate wealth, but only for part of your life. Then give it away. Don't die clutching your possessions. Don't spend your final years obsessing over your portfolio. Let go. Turn toward what actually matters. Modern Western society has no equivalent framework. We're supposed to accumulate until we die, then leave it to our heirs who will accumulate until they die, in an endless cycle. We've lost the wisdom that letting go is as important as acquiring. There's a practice in Indian philosophy called dawn or charitable giving. But it's not like Western philanthropy, or billionaires give away money for tax breaks in public relations. Dawn is giving a spiritual practice. You give to purify yourself, to loosen your attachment to wealth, to acknowledge that everything you have is temporary anyway. You give without expecting recognition, ideally anonymously. You give as a way of saying, this wealth doesn't belong to me. I'm just passing it through. In traditional Indian culture, wealthy people were expected to give generously. Not just their surplus, but meaningfully. And the respect they earned came not from how much they'd accumulated, but from how wisely and generously they gave. There's a beautiful story about this. A poor widow comes to the temple and donates a single copper coin, all she has. A rich merchant comes and donates 1,000 gold coins. The priest honors the widow's donation above the merchant's. Why? Because she gave everything. She held nothing back. Her giving required faith, trust, sacrifice. The merchant's gift, though larger, cost him nothing. He has plenty left. This story illustrates a key principle. The value of giving isn't in the amount. It's in what it costs you. What you're willing to let go of. Applied to personal finance, this suggests that the goal isn't just accumulating a big number. It's developing the internal freedom to give generously, to not be controlled by money, to hold your wealth lightly enough that you can let it go when appropriate. Modern Indians, of course, don't all live by these ancient principles. India has billionaires, consumer culture, materialism like everywhere else. But the philosophical framework still influences the culture in subtle ways. Indian culture tends to maintain stronger extended family ties than Western culture. Multiple generations living together or nearby, sharing resources, caring for elders at home rather than in institutions. This reduces individual financial burden and provides built-in community support. There's also a cultural acceptance of modest living that's different from American expectations. An Indian middle-class home might be small, sparsely furnished, without air conditioning. But it's not seen as poverty or failure. It's just normal. Enough. The pressure to constantly upgrade, to have the latest everything, to live large, it exists in India, but it's not as intense as in America. Partly because India is poorer, yes. But partly because of lingering cultural values that see simplicity as virtuous, not as something to escape from. There's a Hindi word, jogad, that means making do with what you have. Improvising. Repairing instead of replacing. finding creative solutions with limited resources. It's celebrated as cleverness, resourcefulness. In American culture, jogad might be seen as poverty, as not being able to afford the right solution. But in Indian culture, it's a skill. Why buy new when you can fix the old? Why waste money on fancy solutions when simple ones work? This connects to the concept of santosh, contentment. Being satisfied with what you have. Not in a complacent way that prevents growth or improvement, but in a way that prevents endless striving, constant dissatisfaction, the hedonic treadmill. Santosh is seeing that you already have enough. That more might be nice but isn't necessary for happiness. That you can stop the race anytime you choose and just be content. The Bhagavad Gita, one of Hinduism's most important texts, has a famous passage about this. Krishna tells Arjuna, "You have the right to work, but never to the fruit of work. You should never engage in action for the sake of reward, nor should you long for an action. Do your work. Do it well. But don't be attached to the results. Don't make outcomes, including financial outcomes, the measure of your success or the source of your happiness." This is radically different from American work culture, where we're taught that results are everything. You're measured by your output, your earnings, your achievements. If you work hard but don't get the results you want, you failed. Indian philosophy says, no. You succeeded if you did good work with right intention. The results aren't entirely up to you. They depend on countless factors beyond your control. So do your best, but let go of the outcome. Apply to money, budget responsibly, invest wisely, work diligently. But don't obsess over every fluctuation in your net worth. Don't let market downturns devastate you. You did your part. The rest is not your burden to carry. There's tremendous freedom in this. Freedom from anxiety. Freedom from the constant feeling that you're not doing enough. Freedom to rest in the knowledge that you're doing what you can, and that's sufficient. Let me tell you about Priya, a composite representing these Indian financial values. Priya is 47. She works as a software engineer in Bangalore. She makes a good salary by Indian standards, maybe $25,000 per year. Priya lives with her parents, her husband, and her 2 children in a 3-bedroom flat that her extended family purchased together. It's crowded by American standards, but everyone has enough space. The arrangement saves everyone money and provides built-in childcare and elder care. Priya saves about 40% of her income. Part goes to her children's education fund. Part goes to gold jewelry, which serves as both savings and adornment. Part goes to investments. And part goes to Dawn, regular charitable giving to her temple and to various causes. She lives simply. Home-cooked meals, mostly vegetarian. Simple cotton clothing. Entertainment is mostly family gatherings, religious festivals, and the occasional movie. She doesn't feel deprived. This is just life. Priya practices yoga and meditation daily. Not for fitness or stress relief, though those are benefits, but as spiritual practice, as a way of maintaining equanimity, as a reminder that she is not her possessions, not her job, not her bank account. When Priya's father needed expensive medical treatment, the whole extended family contributed. When her brother lost his job, she helped support his family until he found work. When her neighbor's child needed school fees, Priya contributed. This isn't remarkable. It's just how things work. Priya will retire at 60 with a modest pension and her savings. She'll have enough. Not luxury, but security. And she'll spend her later years helping with grandchildren, deepening her spiritual practice, and giving away most of what she's accumulated. She's not stressed about money. Not because she's rich, but because she's learned aparigraha. She holds things lightly. She knows what enough looks like. She's not grasping for more. Compare Priya to an American earning the same amount relative to their economy. The American probably lives alone or with just immediate family, paying full housing costs individually. She's anxious about retirement because she knows Social Security won't be enough and she's solely responsible for her own old age. If her parent needs care, she has to pay for assisted living, crushing expense. She has student debt. She feels pressure to maintain a lifestyle that projects success. Same relative income. Completely different stress levels. Why? Culture. Philosophy. Different answers to the question, what is money for? Indian philosophy says money is for supporting life, community, and spiritual development. Not for accumulation. Not for status. Not as a scorecard. When you have enough for those three purposes, you have enough. And what is enough? The answer varies by person, by circumstance. But the practice is the same. Ask honestly what you need. Distinguish needs from wants. Examine your wants to see what deeper need they're trying to meet. And find appropriate, often non-monetary ways to meet those deeper needs. This doesn't mean becoming a monk. It means living as a conscious householder. Engaged with the world but not enslaved by it. Earning and spending but not grasping. Accumulating for legitimate purposes but not clinging. As you rest deeper, bring to mind something you own that you're attached to. Something you'd be upset to lose. A possession that feels like part of your identity. Now imagine holding it more lightly. Appreciating it while you have it, but knowing you'd be okay without it. Enjoying it without needing it. Owning it without it owning you. That's aparigraha. That's the freedom Indian philosophy offers. Not poverty. Not deprivation. Freedom. Now let's travel to Latin America, or we'll discover a completely different approach to money. One based on family, on relationships, on collective advancement rather than individual success. We're going to learn why, in many Latin cultures, financial decisions are never made alone. ## Part 7, Latin American Collectivism, 105:00-115:00. ## Familia, Compadresco, and Collective Prosperity. In American culture, we celebrate the self-made man. The individual who pulled themselves up by their bootstraps. Who needed nobody's help. Who made it on their own. In Latin American culture, this story sounds lonely. Sad, even. Because who wants to succeed alone? Where's the joy in achievement if you have no one to share it with? What's the point of wealth if your family still struggles? Latin American cultures, from Mexico to Argentina, the Caribbean to Brazil, have a fundamentally different relationship with money. It's not individual. It's collective. Your financial life is inseparable from your family's financial life. The core unit isn't the individual. It's la familia. And familia means more than just parents and siblings. It's extended family, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, even second cousins. It's compadres and comadres of godparents and close family friends who are family in all but blood. Your finances are their finances. Their struggles are your struggles. When one person succeeds, everyone benefits. When one person falls, everyone helps catch them. To an American raised on individualism, this might sound suffocating. Don't you want independence? Don't you want to make your own choices? Don't you resent having to support relatives? But from a Latin perspective, it's not burden. It's security. It's wealth of a different kind: relational wealth, social capital, the knowledge that you're never alone in this world. There's a concept in Mexican culture called compadrazgo, the system of godparenthood that creates extended kinship networks. When a child is baptized, the godparents aren't just ceremonial figures. They're committing to help raise this child, to support them financially if needed, to be there for major life events. This creates intricate webs of mutual obligation. You're godparent to your friend's child, they're godparent to yours. Your compadre loses his job, you help him out. You need help with a down payment, your comadre contributes. Someone needs childcare, the family network provides. Money circulates through these networks constantly. Not as loans with interest. Not as formal transactions. As help. As support. As what family does. An American might ask, but what if someone takes advantage? What if they never pay you back? How do you enforce these obligations? The answer is, you don't enforce them legally. You enforce them socially. Your reputation is everything. If you take help but never give it, everyone knows. You'll be talked about. You'll be seen as sinvergüenza, shameless. The social cost is too high. And most people don't take advantage because these aren't strangers. These are the people you see at every family gathering, every Sunday dinner, every baptism and wedding and funeral. These are your people. You can't cheat your people and live with yourself. This system creates remarkable financial resilience. When someone loses a job, they're not immediately in crisis. The family network supports them while they find work. When someone wants to start a business, the family pools resources. When medical bills hit, everyone contributes what they can. The downside is lack of privacy and autonomy. Your financial choices aren't just yours. If you get a promotion, your family expects you to help more. If you want to save for yourself, you might be seen as selfish. The pressure to share can be intense. Let me tell you about Miguel, a composite representing these dynamics. Miguel is 35, living in Guadalajara, Mexico. He's an accountant making a decent middle-class salary, maybe $18,000 a year. Miguel lives with his wife and 2 children, but also his mother, who's widowed, and his younger sister, who's in university. 7 people in a 3-bedroom house. It's tight, but it's temporary. His sister will eventually move out, and they're saving for a bigger place. Miguel sends money to his father's brother in a rural village, $100 a month, which goes far there and helps his uncle's family survive. He's also helping pay for his nephew's high school fees. He contributes to his compadre's daughter's quinceañera party. He lent money to his cousin to fix his car so he could get to work. If you add it all up, Miguel gives away or lends about 30% of his income to family and extended family. An American financial advisor would be horrified. You're sabotaging your own future. You'll never get ahead. But Miguel sees it differently. He's investing in relationships. He's building social capital. He's ensuring that when he needs help, the network will be there. And it works. When Miguel's car broke down, his compadre, who's a mechanic, fixed it for free. When his wife needed surgery, her godmother helped cover costs. When Miguel wanted to buy his house, his extended family pooled resources for the down payment. He's not financially independent in the American sense. But he's secure in a way that's deeper than a bank account. He's embedded in a network of mutual support that would take millions of dollars to replicate through market transactions. This is why remittances are so important in Latin American economies. Immigrants working in the U.S. send billions of dollars back to family in their home countries. To an outsider, this might look like they're being taken advantage of. They're working hard, and their family back home is reaping the benefits. But from within the culture, it makes perfect sense. Your family invested in you. They helped you get to the U.S., supported you when you arrived, cheered your success. Now you're helping them. It's not exploitation. It's reciprocity. And importantly, it goes both ways. If that immigrant falls on hard times, the family will support them. If they want to return home, they have a place to go, people who will help them restart. The remittances aren't just gifts. They're insurance premiums paid into the family network. There's a Brazilian concept called jeitinho brasileiro, which roughly means finding a way or making it work. It's the art of being flexible, creative, using personal connections to solve problems. Need a permit? You know someone who knows someone. Need a job? Your cousin works there and can put in a word. Need to fix something? Your neighbor's brother-in-law has the skills. This isn't corruption, though it can slide into that. It's recognizing that in an economy where formal systems don't always work efficiently, informal networks fill the gaps. And those networks are built on relationships, favors, mutual help. The financial implication is that you invest not just in money but in relationships. You do favors expecting nothing immediate in return, but knowing that when you need something, the network will respond. Your wealth is measured partly by how many people would help you if you asked. Latin American cultures also have different attitudes about time and planning. There's less emphasis on saving for distant retirement, more on enjoying life now while you can. Less anxiety about the future, more trust that things will work out, that family will help, that God will provide. To American ears, this might sound irresponsible. Don't you need to plan? What about retirement? What about emergencies? But from a Latin perspective, Americans seem anxious and lonely. Always saving for someday instead of living now. Working constantly, missing their children's lives. Accumulating money but impoverishing their relationships. Who's really richer? The American with a large 401k but no one to call in crisis. Or the Latin American with modest savings but a network of 50 people who'd help without hesitation. This isn't to romanticize poverty. Many Latin Americans struggle financially in ways that are genuinely difficult. But even in poverty, the family network provides a cushion that individualistic cultures lack. There's also a different relationship with celebration and spending. In American culture, we're taught to be frugal, to save, to delay gratification. Spending money on a party might be seen as frivolous. But in Latin culture, celebrations are investments in community. When you throw a big party for your daughter's quinceañera or your son's wedding, you're not just celebrating. You're strengthening bonds. You're demonstrating generosity. You're giving people an experience they'll remember and talk about. The money spent on celebration isn't wasted. It's purchasing something that can't be bought any other way: shared joy, collective memory, strengthened relationships. These things have enormous value even if they don't show up in a bank account. As you settle deeper into rest, think about your own financial network. Who would you call in a crisis? Who would help you without hesitation? And who could call you? The Latin American approach suggests that these relationships are a form of wealth worth investing in. That sometimes the best financial decision is to help someone, even if you don't get paid back. That your security lies not just in your personal savings but in the strength of your social bonds. You don't have to be Latin American to build this kind of wealth. You just have to recognize that humans are social creatures who need each other. That isolation, even wealthy isolation, is a form of poverty. That the richest life is one embedded in relationships of mutual care and support. Let the thought carry you deeper into peaceful rest as we move toward our closing reflections. #Part 8. Closing reflections, 115:00, 120:00. #### finding your own money story. We've traveled the world tonight. From Denmark's Camelot Huba to Japan's mindful Kokibo. From Bhutan's happiness-focused economy to indigenous gift traditions. From India's practice of non-attachment to Latin America's family-centered prosperity. These aren't just interesting cultural differences. They're different answers to the same fundamental questions. Questions that each of us must answer for ourselves. What is money for? What is wealth? What is enough? What makes a life rich? American culture gives you one set of answers. Money is for freedom and independence. Wealth is accumulation. Enough is always more than you currently have. A rich life is one of luxury, success, and individual achievement. But tonight, you've heard different answers. Money is for security and relationships. Wealth is time, community, contentment. Enough is when your needs are met and you're at peace. A rich life is one of connection, meaning, and balance. Neither set of answers is absolutely right or wrong. They're choices, stories, frameworks that shape how you live. The question is, which story serves you? Which framework helps you live the life you actually want, not the life you've been told to want? Maybe you resonate with Scandinavian lagom, the Goldilocks principle of just right. Not too much, not too little. Finding your perfect balance. Maybe you're drawn to Japanese wabi-sabi, appreciating what you have, finding beauty in simplicity, holding things lightly. Maybe Bhutan's focus on happiness over GDP speaks to you, the recognition that economic growth isn't the point, that well-being matters more than wealth. Maybe the indigenous gift economy resonates, the idea that your security lies in community, that generosity is an investment, that relationships matter more than accumulation. Maybe Indian philosophy's aparigraha calls to you, learning to not grasp, to be content, to free yourself from the tyranny of desire. Maybe Latin American familiar values make sense, your financial life embedded in relationships, collective advancement over individual success, the wealth of belonging. Or maybe you take pieces from each. A hybrid philosophy. Your own money story, assembled from wisdom traditions around the world. The point isn't to abandon American culture completely. There's value in American emphasis on opportunity, innovation, and individual freedom. But there's also wisdom in recognizing that American culture doesn't have all the answers. That other cultures have figured out things we're still struggling with. Financial anxiety. Work-life balance. Community connection. Contentment. Knowing when enough is enough. These are areas where American culture struggles and other cultures excel. Not because they're better people, but because they have different frameworks, different stories, different values. You can borrow those frameworks. Try them on. See what fits. Maybe you start small. Practice Kokibo for a month, asking yourself why you're really buying things before you buy them. Notice what you learn about yourself. Maybe you create hygge in your life, those intentional moments of coziness and connection that cost almost nothing but feel like everything. Maybe you adopt aparigraha, holding your possessions more lightly, appreciating without grasping, owning without being owned. Maybe you invest more in relationships and less in independence, building your own family network of mutual support, even if it's not biological family. Maybe you question whether you really need to earn more, or if you could be content with less if you wanted different things. The American dream told you that success looks one way. Climb the ladder. Make more money. Buy more things. Live large. Retire rich. But what if your dream looks different? What if success for you is time with family? Or work that's meaningful even if it doesn't pay the most? Or a simple life that leaves room for creativity and rest? Or strong relationships and community connection? There's no wrong answer, but there is your answer. And discovering it requires questioning the story you've been told and considering whether other stories might serve you better. As you drift off completely now, let go of all these frameworks and philosophies. Let go of thinking and analyzing. Let go of financial stress and anxiety. Let go of comparing yourself to others. Let go of worrying about the future. Just rest. Just breathe. Just be here now, in this moment, which costs nothing and is infinitely valuable. You are enough. Right now. Regardless of your bank balance. Regardless of your accomplishments. Regardless of what you own or don't own. You are enough. That's the deepest wisdom from every culture we've explored tonight. Not that you need to earn enough or achieve enough or accumulate enough, but that you are enough. Inherently. Always. The money is just a tool. The possessions are just things. The status is just a story. What's real is this breath. This moment. This existence. This mysterious gift of being alive. Rest in that. Let everything else fall away. Let yourself be held by something deeper than any economic system. Let yourself remember what you knew before anyone taught you about money, that you are valuable simply because you exist. Sleep now. Deeply. Peacefully. Richly. Not with the riches of gold or silver, but with the riches of rest, of peace, of being exactly who you are, exactly where you are. You've traveled the world tonight and learned that wealth has many faces. Time. Relationships. Security. Community. Contentment. Nature. Meaning. Freedom. Tomorrow, you can decide which forms of wealth you want to cultivate. But tonight, just rest in the wealth of this moment. This breath. This peace. Sleep well, dear traveler. You are rich beyond measure in ways that matter more than money could ever capture. Silence. The end.